What really happened in the lost years of Jesus, the years the Bible chose to keep hidden? Between the temple at age 12 and his baptism at age 30, there is absolute silence. But silence often hides secrets. And sometimes, those secrets are buried for reasons that would shake the very foundations of everything you believe about the Son of God. Today, we descend into the abyss of those lost 18 years, where shadows dance with forbidden knowledge, where ancient texts whisper of journeys that would terrify the faithful, and where the young Jesus, the carpenter's son from Nazareth, may have walked paths so dark, so mysterious, so filled with supernatural encounters, that the early church fathers chose to bury them in silence, rather than reveal the full truth of his earthly preparation. Picture this: a 12-year-old boy sitting among the learned doctors in Solomon's temple, astounding them with his wisdom and understanding. The Gospel of Luke gives us this single glimpse, a brief candle flame, illuminating a moment before plunging us back into 18 years of impenetrable darkness. But what if that darkness is not empty? What if it teems with experiences so profound, so otherworldly, so dangerous that speaking of them openly could shatter the comfortable faith of millions? The canonical Gospels tell us nothing, absolutely nothing, about Jesus between his childhood appearance in the temple and his emergence as a 30-year-old man at the Jordan River. 18 years of absolute silence from the most documented life in human history. 18 years during which a boy became a man, during which the Son of God walked this earth, learning something. But what? And why has the church been so determined to keep these years shrouded in mystery? The early church fathers possessed documents, ancient texts, eyewitness accounts, letters, and gospels that spoke of these missing years. Yet when they assembled the biblical canon, they made a choice that should chill you to the bone. They decided that humanity was not ready for the full truth. They locked away testimonies that spoke of Jesus' journeys to distant lands, his encounters with fallen angels, his education in mysteries so profound that only the most spiritually mature could comprehend them without losing their minds. But some of these texts survived, hidden in caves, buried in desert sands, preserved in secret monasteries by monks who understood that truth, no matter how terrifying, must never be completely lost to history. These forbidden gospels, these apocryphal accounts, these Gnostic revelations paint a picture of the missing years that is so startling, so filled with supernatural horror and divine mystery, that reading them will forever change how you see the Jesus of the New Testament. The infancy gospel of Thomas speaks of a young Jesus whose divine power manifested in ways that terrified his neighbors. Clay birds that came to life at his word, playmates struck dead for opposing him, teachers who fled in fear when they realized they were trying to instruct one who possessed knowledge that predated creation itself. But if his childhood was marked by such displays of supernatural power, what happened during the silent years when that power was maturing, developing, preparing for the ministry that would shake the world? The Gospel of James hints at mysteries surrounding his family, at supernatural events that continued to unfold around the growing Jesus, at visitations from beings that existed beyond the veil of ordinary human experience. Mary, his mother, is described as receiving ongoing revelations, warnings, and instructions about her son's destiny, communications that spoke of trials and preparations that would test not just his humanity, but the very fabric of reality itself. Ancient historians like Josephus and Philo write of mystery schools in Egypt, religious communities in India, and secret societies in the regions around Palestine that possessed knowledge dating back to the time of Enoch, knowledge of the Watchers, the fallen angels, the secrets of heaven and earth that were revealed to mankind before the Great Flood. Could it be that during these 18 missing years, Jesus was not simply learning carpentry in Nazareth, but was instead journeying to these centers of ancient wisdom, preparing for a cosmic battle that would determine the fate of humanity? The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in caves near Qumran, contain references to a teacher of righteousness, who would come to prepare the way for the final battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. This teacher would possess knowledge of both divine mysteries and demonic deceptions, would understand the languages of angels and the schemes of fallen principalities. The timing, the location, the descriptions match so perfectly with the missing years of Jesus that scholars who study these texts in private whisper theories that would horrify their academic institutions. But perhaps most terrifying of all are the Gnostic texts. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Mary, and the mysterious Pistis Sophia, documents that claim to record actual conversations between Jesus and his disciples about the true nature of reality, about the structure of the spiritual realms, about knowledge so dangerous that it could only be shared with those who had been specially prepared to receive it. These texts speak of Jesus as one who had journeyed through the very realms of darkness, who had confronted the archons and principalities face to face, who had learned their names, their weaknesses, their plans for humanity. According to these forbidden Gospels, the Jesus who emerged at age 30 to begin his public ministry was not simply a carpenter from Nazareth who had suddenly received a divine calling. He was a being who had spent 18 years preparing for cosmic warfare, who had walked through the valleys of shadow and death, who had learned secrets about the nature of existence that most humans could never comprehend without losing their sanity. The silence of those 18 years may not be an accident or an oversight. It may be a protective veil drawn across experiences so intense, so supernaturally charged, so filled with encounters with beings of pure light and absolute darkness that the early church decided humanity was not ready, may never be ready, to know the full truth of what their Savior endured in preparation for his ministry. But tonight, we tear away that veil. Tonight, we peer into the darkness of those missing years and confront the possibility that the Jesus who walked on water, who raised the dead, who cast out legions of demons with a word, had learned to do these things not through sudden divine inspiration, but through 18 years of supernatural preparation that would make the trials of Job seem like gentle summer rain. Are you prepared to discover what really happened during the years the Bible refuses to speak of? Are you ready to learn why the church has kept these secrets buried for nearly 2,000 years? Then, hold fast to whatever faith you can muster, because what you are about to hear will forever change how you see the Son of God, the nature of his mission, and the cosmic forces he was preparing to face. To understand the missing years, we must first comprehend what kind of child Jesus was. For the canonical Gospels give us only the briefest glimpse of his early manifestations of power. But the apocryphal texts, those forbidden Gospels that the Church locked away, paint a picture so startling, so filled with supernatural phenomena, that it becomes clear why 18 years of silence follow his childhood appearance in the temple. The infancy Gospel of Thomas, written in the 2nd century but claiming much earlier sources, describes a 5-year-old Jesus playing by a stream on the Sabbath, molding clay into the shapes of 12 sparrows. When Joseph the carpenter scolds him for working on the Sabbath and moves to destroy the clay figures, something happens that defies every law of nature. Jesus claps his hands and commands the clay birds to fly away. The lifeless clay transforms into living flesh and feather. The sparrows take flight, chirping as they disappear into the sky. But this was no gentle miracle of childhood innocence. The text tells us that those who witnessed this display of divine power were struck with such terror that they fled, whispering among themselves that this child possessed knowledge and abilities that belonged only to the Creator himself. The boundary between the divine and human realms had been shattered by a 5-year-old boy, and the implications were too overwhelming for mortal minds to fully comprehend. The same text records an incident that reveals the darker potential of this supernatural power. A boy named Annas, son of a scribe, takes a willow branch and destroys the pools of water that Jesus had made in the stream. In response to this act of destruction, Jesus speaks words that chill the blood. "You insolent, godless dullard, what did the pools and water do to harm you? See, now you also shall wither like a tree, and shall bear neither leaves, nor root, nor fruit." The child Annas immediately withers like a plant touched by supernatural drought, his parents carrying him away as a living testament to the terrible power that resided in the carpenter's son. This was not the gentle Jesus of Sunday school lessons, but a being whose very words could reshape reality, whose emotional responses could unleash forces that defied human understanding. As Jesus grew older, these manifestations of power became more sophisticated but no less terrifying to those who witnessed them. The Gospel of Thomas describes an incident when Jesus was 8 years old, carrying water in his cloak because he had broken his water pitcher. When his mother Mary marveled at this impossibility, Jesus began to reveal knowledge that a child could not possibly possess through normal human learning. The text records him speaking of mysteries that were hidden before the foundation of the world, of the names of angels that had been forgotten since the time of Adam, of the structure of the heavenly realms in detail so precise that listening to him was like receiving direct revelation from the throne of God. His mother Mary, the text tells us, was filled with both wonder and terror, for she began to realize that her son possessed not just divine power, but divine knowledge, complete, perfect, and overwhelming in its scope. But perhaps most disturbing of all were his encounters with the religious teachers of his day. The Arabic Gospel of the Infancy describes Jesus at age 7, entering a school to learn to read. But when the teacher attempts to instruct him, Jesus begins to explain the mystical meanings of the Hebrew letters, meanings so profound and esoteric that the teacher realizes he is in the presence of one who understands the very building blocks of creation itself. The teacher, according to the text, becomes so overwhelmed by this revelation that he begins to weep, saying, "I have brought shame upon myself by taking on this child as a student. Take him away from me, I beg you, Brother Joseph. I cannot endure the severity of his gaze. I cannot make sense of his words. This child is not earth-born. He can tame fire itself. Perhaps he was born before the creation of the world." These accounts reveal that from his earliest years, Jesus was not simply a child who would one day receive divine power, but a being who already possessed complete access to the mysteries of heaven and earth. The question that haunts these texts is this: if he already possessed such overwhelming supernatural knowledge and power as a child, what did he need to learn during the 18 missing years? What kind of preparation requires 18 years when you already command the forces of creation itself? The Protevangelium of James provides a clue that is as terrifying as it is enlightening. It describes Mary receiving a vision when Jesus was 12 years old, just after his appearance in the temple. In this vision, she sees her son walking not just on earthly paths, but through realms of light and shadow, confronting beings whose very presence could destroy unprepared minds. The angel who delivers this vision warns her that her son must journey through all the kingdoms of darkness before his ministry can begin, learning not just divine mysteries, but the secrets of evil itself. This vision suggests that the missing 18 years were not years of quiet preparation in Nazareth, but years of cosmic education, a supernatural curriculum that would prepare Jesus not just to teach divine love, but to wage war against principalities and powers that had been corrupting humanity since the fall of the Watchers. The Gnostic Gospel of Thomas contains sayings attributed to Jesus that hint at knowledge he could only have gained through direct experience with the darkest corners of spiritual reality. In saying 77, he claims to be the light that is over all things, and all things came forth from me, and all things reached me. This is not the language of someone who learned about creation through human teaching, but of one who had walked through the process of creation and destruction, witnessing firsthand the cosmic forces that most humans cannot even imagine. The early church fathers read these texts and made a decision that reverberates through history. They determined that revealing the full extent of Jesus' supernatural childhood would either drive believers to despair at their own inadequacy or, worse still, lead them to attempt to unlock divine powers they were not equipped to handle. The silence that shrouds his childhood in the canonical Gospels may be a protective silence, shielding humanity from knowledge that could prove spiritually destructive. But this protective silence raises an even more disturbing question. If the early church felt compelled to hide the supernatural manifestations of Jesus' childhood, what did they feel compelled to hide about his 18 missing years? If clay birds coming to life and children withering at his word were too dangerous for common believers to know about, what cosmic encounters? What supernatural education? What otherworldly journeys did Jesus undertake between the ages of 12 and 30 that were deemed even more dangerous to reveal? The child who astounded the teachers in the temple, who already possessed divine knowledge that surpassed human understanding, did not disappear into 18 years of carpentry and quiet village life. That child became something more, learned something deeper, experienced realities so profound that the early church decided that preserving the faith of believers required keeping those experiences locked away in silence. And now, nearly 2,000 years later, we stand at the threshold of that silence, ready to discover what the church has hidden about the missing years of the Son of God. When the 12-year-old Jesus disappeared from the temple, leaving his parents in agonized search for 3 days, he told them he must be about his Father's business. But what business? What cosmic curriculum required 18 years of preparation before the Son of God was ready to begin his earthly ministry? The silence of the canonical Gospels speaks volumes, but the whispered traditions of ancient peoples, the secret teachings of mystery schools, and the forbidden texts that survived in hidden libraries tell a different story entirely. The earliest traditions, preserved in Coptic monasteries and whispered among Christian communities in India, speak of Jesus undertaking journeys that would have terrified seasoned travelers. These were not the pleasant missionary journeys of his later ministry, but expeditions into the heart of spiritual darkness. Education in mysteries so dangerous that one wrong step could result in spiritual corruption or even possession by forces beyond human comprehension. The first of these journeys, according to the lost gospel of the Egyptians, took him to the ancient temples of Egypt, where the priests who had preserved knowledge from the time before the flood still guarded secrets that dated back to the watchers themselves. These were not the public temples where tourists and merchants gathered, but hidden sanctuaries carved deep into desert rocks, accessible only to those who proved themselves worthy through trials that tested not just courage, but spiritual resilience. In these temples, according to fragments preserved in Syrian manuscripts, Jesus encountered priests who had been guardian keepers of the Book of Enoch for generations. These were men who had spent their entire lives studying the accounts of the fallen watchers, learning the names and methods of the 200 angels who had descended from heaven to corrupt humanity. They possessed knowledge of the 72 demons of Solomon, understanding of the spiritual hierarchies that governed both heaven and hell, and most terrifying of all, techniques for binding and controlling spiritual entities that most humans could not even perceive. The training Jesus received in these temples, according to the testimony of Clement of Alexandria before his writings were suppressed, included not just theoretical knowledge of spiritual warfare, but practical experience. He was taught to discern between angels of light and demons masquerading as divine messengers. He learned the true names of the principalities and powers that ruled over earthly kingdoms. Most disturbing of all, he was instructed in the art of entering the spiritual realms while still inhabiting his physical body, a practice so dangerous that even experienced mystics rarely attempted it without extensive preparation and supernatural protection. The Pistis Sophia, that mysterious Gnostic text that claims to record actual conversations between the risen Jesus and his disciples, contains references to this Egyptian period that are both enlightening and terrifying. Jesus speaks of having traversed all the regions of the archons, of having learned the names by which the rulers of darkness bind human souls, and most chilling of all, of having tasted the cup of suffering that the fallen ones prepared for humanity. In order to understand exactly what forces he would be confronting during his ministry. But Egypt was only the beginning. Tibetan Buddhist texts, preserved in monasteries that predate Christian influence in the region, speak of a young Jewish teacher who came to them during the reign of Tiberius Caesar, seeking knowledge of meditation techniques so advanced that they bordered on communication with beings from other realms of existence. This teacher, whom they called Saint Yeshua, demonstrated abilities that astounded even monks who had spent decades mastering consciousness manipulation. According to the Hemis manuscript, discovered in 1887 but mysteriously lost shortly thereafter, Jesus spent several years in these monasteries, learning techniques for consciousness projection that allowed him to perceive the spiritual forces operating behind earthly events. He mastered methods of mental protection against demonic influence that had been developed over centuries of spiritual warfare. Most significantly, he learned to maintain his divine connection even while exposing himself to the darkest spiritual influences, a skill that would prove essential when confronting the forces of hell that had been corrupting humanity since Eden. The monks recorded that this young Jewish mystic possessed knowledge that seemed to come from direct revelation rather than human teaching. He spoke of the fall of Lucifer as if he had witnessed it personally. He described the corruption of the Watchers with details that matched their most ancient texts. Most unsettling of all, he demonstrated the ability to call upon spiritual entities by name, not to worship them, but to command their obedience with an authority that suggested intimate knowledge of the cosmic hierarchy. From Tibet, the ancient traditions suggest Jesus journeyed to India, where he encountered mystery schools that preserved knowledge of the spiritual realms that predated even Egyptian civilization. The Vedic texts speak of a foreign teacher who came among them possessing understanding of the Brahman that surpassed their most learned gurus, yet who warned them of spiritual deceptions that their traditions had not recognized. In the temples of Kashmir, according to local legends that persist to this day, Jesus studied with masters who had maintained contact with spiritual beings since the time of the Great Deluge. These were not benevolent deities, but entities of immense power whose motivations remain mysterious and potentially dangerous. The training Jesus received involved learning to communicate with these beings without being corrupted or deceived by them, a skill that required not just spiritual strength, but intimate knowledge of their nature and methods. The Gospel of Barnabas, rejected by the Church but preserved in Islamic traditions, contains references to this Indian period that are both fascinating and disturbing. It describes Jesus learning techniques for spiritual healing that involved not just divine power, but understanding of how demonic influences attach themselves to human souls. He studied methods for exorcism that required him to enter into direct spiritual combat with entities that most humans could not even perceive, let alone confront and defeat. But perhaps most controversial of all were his alleged encounters with the Essene communities near the Dead Sea, where the Qumran scrolls suggest he may have learned the deepest secrets about the end times and the final battle between good and evil. The community rule and the war scroll describe preparation for a cosmic conflict that would determine the ultimate fate of humanity, knowledge so sensitive that it was hidden in caves and revealed only to the most spiritually mature initiates. According to the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, Jesus spent time with these communities learning not just about the coming judgment, but about the specific roles that fallen angels and demons would play in the final deception of humanity. He studied prophetic texts that described in terrifying detail how spiritual entities would masquerade as angels of light, how false messiahs would perform convincing miracles, and how the very elect would be tested by deceptions so sophisticated that only those with complete spiritual discernment would be able to resist them. The Dead Sea community preserved traditions about the Watchers that were more complete and more disturbing than even the Book of Enoch. They possessed detailed accounts of how these fallen angels had not simply taught humanity forbidden knowledge, but had actually interbred with human women to create hybrid offspring whose spiritual nature was so corrupted that they became the source of demonic influence throughout human history. Jesus, according to these traditions, studied these accounts not as historical curiosity, but as intelligence gathering for the spiritual warfare he would soon be waging. He learned to identify the signatures of Watcher influence, to recognize the patterns of spiritual corruption they had established, and most importantly, to understand the legal and cosmic grounds by which they claimed authority over human souls. The 18 missing years begin to take shape not as a period of quiet carpentry and village life, but as an intensive education in cosmic warfare. Jesus was learning not just how to heal the sick and comfort the afflicted, but how to wage war against principalities and powers that had been corrupting humanity for millennia. He was studying the enemy, learning their methods, understanding their weaknesses, and most crucially, discovering the spiritual and legal grounds by which their authority over humanity could be challenged and broken. When Jesus finally emerged at age 30 to begin his public ministry, he was not simply a carpenter who had received a divine calling. He was a being who had spent 18 years preparing for the most important battle in cosmic history, a battle that would be fought not with earthly weapons, but with spiritual authority gained through the most dangerous education ever undertaken by a human being. The silence of the canonical Gospels about these years begins to make sense. How do you explain to simple fishermen and tax collectors that their teacher had spent 18 years learning to wage war against fallen angels? How do you tell comfortable believers that their Savior's preparation involved journeying into the heart of spiritual darkness and emerging victorious? How do you reveal that the gentle carpenter from Nazareth was actually a cosmic warrior trained in mysteries that could shatter unprepared minds? You don't. You maintain the silence. You let people believe in the gentle Jesus of Sunday school lessons. And you lock away the testimonies of the cosmic warrior who emerged from 18 years of supernatural education, ready to challenge the very foundations of hell itself. In the sandy wastes of Nag Hammadi, Egypt. In December 1945, a peasant farmer named Muhammad al-Salman made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the foundations of Christian theology. Buried in a sealed jar were 52 text gospels, apocalypses, and treatises that claimed to preserve the secret teachings of Jesus Christ, knowledge so dangerous that the Orthodox Church had tried to destroy every copy for over 1,500 years. These Gnostic Gospels paint a picture of Jesus's missing years that is so startling, so filled with cosmic revelation and supernatural encounters, that reading them transforms everything you thought you knew about the Son of God. They speak not of a simple carpenter's son who received divine inspiration, but of a being who spent 18 years traversing the multiple dimensions of reality, learning secrets that had been hidden since the foundation of the world. The Gospel of Thomas, perhaps the most significant of these discoveries, preserves sayings of Jesus that suggest intimate knowledge of the structure of spiritual reality, knowledge that he could only have acquired through direct experience during the missing years. In saying 77, Jesus declares, "I am the light that is over all things. I am all. From me all came forth, and to me all attained. Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there." This is not the language of someone who learned about creation through human teaching, but of one who had experienced the process of creation from the inside out. The missing years, according to these Gnostic revelations, involved Jesus journeying not just to distant lands, but to distant dimensions, learning firsthand about the cosmic forces that shaped reality itself. The Gospel of Philip contains even more disturbing revelations about Jesus' supernatural education. It describes him as one who knew the mystery of those who are chosen, and who had learned the names by which the powers are called in every place. This suggests that during the missing years, Jesus acquired not just general spiritual knowledge, but specific intelligence about the hierarchies of spiritual beings, both angelic and demonic, that govern different regions of both the earthly and heavenly realms. The text goes on to describe Jesus as having descended into the depths and ascended to the heights, suggesting journeys through spiritual realms that most humans could never survive. The missing years were not spent in quiet contemplation, but in active exploration of the cosmic order, learning through direct experience about the forces that had been shaping human history since the fall of man. Perhaps most chilling is the Gospel of Judas, which preserves a conversation between Jesus and his most notorious disciple about the true nature of the spiritual forces governing human existence. Jesus speaks of the God of this world and the archons who rule in darkness, describing them with such intimate detail that it becomes clear he had encountered them personally during his years of preparation. According to this forbidden gospel, Jesus tells Judas that the material world is governed by spiritual entities whose primary goal is to keep human souls trapped in ignorance of their divine nature. These archons, as they are called in Gnostic literature, are described as having established religious and political systems specifically designed to prevent humans from accessing the knowledge that could liberate them from spiritual bondage. The implications are staggering. During the missing 18 years, Jesus may have been learning not just how to perform miracles and teach divine truth, but how to wage war against a complex system of spiritual control that had been operating since the earliest days of human civilization. His preparation involved understanding the enemy's methods so thoroughly that he could expose and defeat them when the time came for his public ministry. The Pistis Sophia, that mysterious Gnostic text that claims to preserve post-resurrection conversations between Jesus and his disciples, contains the most detailed account of his supernatural education. According to this text, Jesus spent the missing years not only traveling through earthly territories, but journeying through what it calls the regions of the invisible, spiritual dimensions where the rules of physical reality do not apply. In these regions, the text tells us, Jesus encountered beings of pure light who had preserved knowledge from before the creation of the material universe. These entities, called the powers of the light, taught him about the true structure of reality, revealing that what humans perceive as the physical world is actually only the outermost layer of a complex spiritual system. But the education was not without danger. The Pistis Sophia describes Jesus' encounters with what it calls the rulers of the fate, spiritual entities whose job is to maintain the system that keeps human souls trapped in cycles of ignorance and suffering. These beings, recognizing that Jesus possessed knowledge that could threaten their authority, attempted to prevent his return to the earthly realm through spiritual attacks of unimaginable intensity. According to the text, Jesus survived these attacks not through passive divine protection, but through active use of spiritual knowledge and techniques he had learned during his years of preparation. He knew the names and weaknesses of his attackers. He understood the spiritual laws that governed their authority. Most importantly, he possessed counter techniques that could neutralize their power and turn their own spiritual weapons against them. The Gospel of Mary, which preserves teachings allegedly given by Jesus to Mary Magdalene, describes the 7 stages of spiritual development that a soul must pass through to achieve liberation from the archon's control. According to this text, Jesus learned about these stages not through theoretical study, but by personally traversing each one during his missing years, experiencing firsthand the spiritual traps and challenges that keep most souls imprisoned. The first stage, according to Mary's Gospel, involves recognizing that the material world is not ultimate reality. The second involves understanding the nature of spiritual desire and learning to transcend it. The third requires confronting the wrath and violence that the archons use to maintain control. Each successive stage presents challenges that become increasingly dangerous and difficult to navigate without extensive preparation. By the seventh stage, according to the text, Jesus had achieved complete liberation from all forms of spiritual bondage and had learned the techniques necessary to guide other souls through the same process. But this education came at a cost. He had to experience every form of spiritual attack, every type of deception, every kind of temptation that the archons could devise. The Gospel of Truth, another Nag Hammadi text, describes Jesus as the one who came to reveal what was hidden and the one who brought forth what was concealed in silence. This language suggests that the missing years involved not just personal spiritual development, but active revelation of cosmic secrets that had been deliberately concealed from humanity. According to this gospel, the knowledge Jesus gained during his preparation years included understanding of the true names of God, the actual structure of the spiritual hierarchies, and most dangerously, the methods by which human souls could be liberated from spiritual bondage. This was not abstract theological knowledge, but practical information that posed a direct threat to the systems of control that the archons had established. The text goes on to describe the fear that Jesus' education caused among the rulers of darkness. They recognized that he had acquired knowledge and abilities that could completely undermine their authority over human souls. His 18 years of preparation had transformed him from a potential threat into an actual cosmic weapon capable of liberating humanity from spiritual bondage that had persisted for millennia. Perhaps most disturbing of all is the suggestion in these Gnostic texts that Jesus' education involved learning about the ultimate fate planned for humanity by the archons. According to the Apocalypse of Adam, he discovered that these entities intended to eventually destroy the physical universe itself, trapping human souls in a purely spiritual prison where their control would be absolute and eternal. This knowledge, the texts suggest, provided the cosmic context for Jesus' ministry. He was not simply offering personal salvation to individual souls, but waging a preemptive war against entities whose ultimate goal was the complete spiritual enslavement of humanity. His 18 years of preparation had been spent learning how to prevent this cosmic catastrophe. The silence of the canonical Gospels about these Gnostic revelations becomes understandable when viewed through this lens. How do you explain to ordinary believers that their Savior spent 18 years learning to wage war against cosmic entities whose very existence would terrify most people into insanity? How do you reveal that the gentle teacher from Nazareth was actually a cosmic warrior who had infiltrated the spiritual systems of control to learn how to destroy them from within? The early church fathers, reading these Gnostic accounts, faced an impossible choice: reveal the full cosmic scope of Jesus' mission and risk driving believers to despair at their own inadequacy, or maintain protective silence about the true nature of his preparation and the enemies he had spent 18 years learning to defeat. They chose silence. They chose to let humanity believe in the simple carpenter from Nazareth rather than reveal the cosmic warrior who had emerged from 18 years of supernatural education in the art of spiritual warfare. But that silence has hidden from us the full magnitude of what Jesus accomplished and the true nature of the battle that he fought on our behalf. The Gnostic texts survived in hidden places, waiting for a time when humanity might be ready to confront the full reality of the cosmic war that was fought for their souls. That time, these ancient authors suggested, would come when the spiritual darkness became so intense that only the full truth about Jesus' preparation and mission could provide the knowledge necessary for survival. The canonical Gospels tell us that after his baptism by John, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil for 40 days. But this brief account conceals a confrontation so epic, so cosmically significant, so filled with supernatural warfare that the full truth would shatter every comfortable assumption about the nature of spiritual reality. What the Gospels expose as a 40-day period of temptation was actually the culmination of 18 years of preparation. The final examination that would determine whether Jesus had truly mastered the knowledge and abilities necessary to wage war against the principalities and powers that had been corrupting humanity since the fall of the Watchers. The Apocryphal Gospel of the Hebrews provides details about this confrontation that are absent from the canonical accounts. According to this text, Jesus did not simply face the devil as a single entity, but confronted what it calls all the princes of darkness. A coordinated attack by the entire hierarchy of fallen angels and demons who recognized that their authority over humanity was being challenged. The text describes the wilderness transforming into a cosmic battleground where the normal laws of physics no longer applied. Time itself became fluid, allowing the spiritual entities to show Jesus visions of every possible future, every potential outcome of his mission, every way in which his sacrifice could be corrupted or turned to serve the purposes of darkness rather than light. Satan, according to the Gospel of the Hebrews, did not limit himself to the 3 temptations recorded in the canonical Gospels. Instead, he launched a comprehensive assault designed to test every aspect of Jesus' supernatural education. Each temptation was crafted specifically to exploit knowledge and abilities that Jesus had gained during the missing 18 years. The first phase of the attack targeted Jesus' knowledge of the cosmic hierarchy. Satan appeared not as an obvious enemy, but as an angel of light, claiming to represent a higher spiritual authority that Jesus had not yet encountered. Using techniques of deception so sophisticated that they could fool even advanced mystics, Satan attempted to convince Jesus that his understanding of the spiritual realms was incomplete and that submission to this higher authority was necessary for the success of his mission. But Jesus, according to the text, responded with knowledge gained during his training in the Egyptian mystery schools. He spoke the true names of the spiritual entities, revealing Satan's deception and demonstrating mastery of the cosmic order that exceeded even the fallen angels' expectations. This was not theoretical knowledge, but practical application of techniques learned through years of dangerous spiritual education. The second phase of the attack targeted Jesus' abilities to traverse spiritual dimensions. Satan created illusions so convincing that they appeared to be alternate realities, attempting to trap Jesus in false spiritual realms where his divine nature would be gradually corrupted through prolonged exposure to deception. These were not simple hallucinations, but actual constructions in spiritual dimensions, entire false universes created through the combined will of fallen angels working in concert. Most humans exposed to such illusions would be completely deceived, their consciousness becoming permanently lost in mazes of spiritual deception. But Jesus, drawing upon techniques learned during his alleged journeys to Tibet and India, maintained perfect awareness of his true location and nature, despite the overwhelming sensory input of the false realities. He had spent years learning to distinguish between authentic spiritual experiences and sophisticated deceptions, and this education now proved essential to his survival. The third phase was the most dangerous of all. According to the Gospel of the Hebrews, Satan offered to reveal secrets that even Jesus' 18 years of education had not uncovered, knowledge of how to prevent the suffering that his mission would require, ways to accomplish the salvation of humanity without enduring the agony of the cross. These were not obviously evil alternatives, but subtle corruptions of divine truth that would have accomplished Satan's goals while appearing to serve the purposes of righteousness. The knowledge required to recognize these deceptions was so advanced that even beings of great spiritual development could be deceived by their sophistication. The text describes Jesus' response as drawing upon every aspect of his supernatural education. He quoted from texts he had studied in the hidden libraries of Egypt. He applied principles of spiritual discernment learned in Tibetan monasteries. He used techniques of cosmic authority developed through his encounters with the Essene communities. The 40 days in the wilderness were not just a time of temptation, but a final examination that tested 18 years of the most dangerous education ever undertaken by a human being. The Secret Book of John, another Gnostic text discovered at Nag Hammadi, contains additional details about this confrontation that are both illuminating and terrifying. According to this text, the spiritual entities that confronted Jesus in the wilderness were not acting independently, but were coordinating their attack according to a plan that had been developed over millennia specifically to prevent the incarnation of divine truth on earth. This plan, the text tells us, involved not just tempting Jesus to sin, but actually attempting to possess his human nature with fallen angelic consciousness. If successful, this possession would have created a being with Jesus' divine power but Satan's will, a cosmic ruler who could have led humanity into spiritual bondage while appearing to offer salvation. The battle to prevent this possession, according to the Secret Book of John, raged not just for 40 days, but for the entire duration of the wilderness period. With the physical temptations described in the canonical Gospels being merely the outward manifestation of a spiritual war that was taking place on multiple dimensions simultaneously. Jesus' victory in this confrontation was not achieved through passive resistance, but through active spiritual warfare that utilized every technique he had learned during his missing years. He bound spiritual entities using names of power learned in Egyptian temples. He protected his consciousness using meditation techniques mastered in Tibetan monasteries. He exercised cosmic authority based on understanding of spiritual law gained through study of the most ancient texts. When the confrontation finally ended, according to these apocryphal accounts, the spiritual entities that had attacked Jesus were not just defeated but bound, their ability to interfere with his earthly ministry severely limited by the demonstration of his superior knowledge and power. The 40 days in the wilderness had been a cosmic trial by combat, and Jesus had emerged victorious. But the victory came at a cost. The text suggests that the intensity of the spiritual warfare in the wilderness left Jesus forever changed. His human consciousness expanded to contain knowledge and experiences that no human mind was designed to hold. The gentle carpenter who had entered the wilderness emerged as a being whose understanding of spiritual reality was so complete, so overwhelming, that even his closest disciples would never fully comprehend the true nature of what they were following. The canonical Gospels tell us that angels ministered to Jesus after his temptation, but they do not describe the nature of this ministry. The apocryphal texts suggest that these angels were not just providing comfort, but were also helping Jesus to integrate the cosmic knowledge and spiritual abilities that his victory in the wilderness had fully activated. When Jesus finally emerged from the wilderness and began his public ministry, he was no longer simply the son of a carpenter who had received divine inspiration. He was a being who had spent 18 years in supernatural education followed by 40 days in cosmic warfare, emerging victorious with complete knowledge of spiritual reality and absolute authority over the forces of darkness. The silence of the canonical Gospels about the true nature of this preparation makes perfect sense. As we reach the climax of this terrifying journey through the missing years of Jesus Christ, we must confront the most disturbing question of all. Why has the Church been so determined to keep these revelations buried for nearly 2,000 years? What truth about the Son of God is so dangerous, so cosmically significant, so potentially destructive to human faith that entire libraries of ancient texts have been locked away? And generations of believers have been deliberately kept in ignorance about the true nature of their Savior as preparation? The answer lies not in protecting the reputation of Jesus Christ, but in protecting the sanity and faith of believers who were deemed too spiritually immature to handle the full truth about the cosmic war that was fought for their souls. The early church fathers, reading the complete accounts of Jesus' missing years, faced a choice that would determine the shape of Christianity for millennia: reveal the full extent of his supernatural education and cosmic authority, or maintain protective silence about truths that could either terrify believers into despair or inspire them to attempt spiritual practices they were not equipped to survive. The documents locked away in the deepest vaults of religious institutions around the world tell a story that is both magnificent and terrifying. They reveal that Jesus Christ, during his 18 missing years, became not just a teacher of divine truth, but a master of cosmic warfare whose knowledge of spiritual realities exceeded that of angels themselves. He learned to command spiritual entities by their true names, to traverse dimensions that most humans cannot even imagine, to wage war against principalities and powers using techniques that had been preserved since before the flood. But the texts reveal something even more disturbing. They suggest that Jesus' cosmic education was not unique, but was actually the restoration of abilities that humanity once possessed before the fall. The missing years were not just about preparing one man for a specific mission, but about demonstrating what human beings could become if they were willing to undergo the same dangerous spiritual education. The Book of Enoch, which was accepted as scripture by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church but rejected by most other Christian traditions, contains prophecies about the end times that take on new meaning when viewed through the lens of Jesus' hidden education. Enoch speaks of a time when the secrets of righteousness will be revealed to humanity, when beings will emerge who possess the same cosmic knowledge and spiritual abilities that Jesus demonstrated during his ministry. According to these prophecies, the knowledge that Jesus gained during his missing years was never intended to remain hidden forever. Instead, it was to be preserved until a time when humanity had spiritually matured enough to handle the full truth about the nature of reality and their own potential for cosmic consciousness. The Gnostic texts go even further, suggesting that Jesus' mission was not just to provide salvation for human souls, but to establish a new form of human consciousness that would be capable of resisting the spiritual control systems that had been governing humanity since the fall of the Watchers. His 18 years of education had prepared him not just to teach spiritual truth, but to demonstrate the kind of cosmic awareness that could break the chains of spiritual bondage that most humans don't even realize they wear. This interpretation transforms everything we thought we knew about Christian salvation. Instead of simply offering escape from this world into a heavenly afterlife, Jesus was demonstrating how to transform human consciousness itself, how to develop the same cosmic awareness and spiritual abilities that he had mastered during his missing years. But this transformation would require the same kind of dangerous spiritual education that he had undergone, a journey that most people would not survive without proper preparation and guidance. The early church fathers, recognizing the dangers inherent in revealing this full truth, made the decision to present a simplified version of Jesus' message that could be safely received by ordinary believers. They emphasized his role as sacrificial lamb and gentle teacher while concealing his identity as cosmic warrior and master of spiritual dimensions. They preserved the transformative knowledge in hidden texts, waiting for a time when humanity would be ready to receive the full revelation. But according to prophetic traditions preserved in various mystical texts, that time of concealment is now ending. The spiritual darkness that is descending upon the world has reached a level where only the full truth about Jesus' cosmic mission and the potential of human consciousness can provide adequate guidance for survival. The knowledge that has been hidden for 2,000 years is beginning to surface, not through church authorization, but through divine revelation to those who are spiritually prepared to receive it. The text suggests that we are entering an age where human beings will begin to manifest the same cosmic abilities that Jesus demonstrated during his ministry, not through their own efforts, but through connection with the same spiritual sources that he accessed during his 18 years of supernatural education. This emergence of cosmic consciousness in ordinary humans will signal the beginning of the final phase of the battle between light and darkness that has been raging since the fall of the Watchers. But this revelation comes with a warning that echoes through all the ancient texts. The same spiritual forces that attempted to corrupt Jesus during his wilderness confrontation are still active, still seeking to prevent human consciousness from achieving its full cosmic potential. As more people begin to access the knowledge that Jesus mastered during his missing years, they will face the same kinds of spiritual attacks that he endured, but most will not have the benefit of 18 years of supernatural preparation. The Church's concealment of the full truth about Jesus' missing years may have been motivated by genuine concern for the spiritual welfare of believers, but it may also have left humanity unprepared for the spiritual warfare that is now beginning to intensify. The cosmic knowledge and spiritual techniques that Jesus mastered are becoming available to ordinary people, but without the institutional support and guidance that could help them navigate the dangers involved. According to the most ancient prophecies, this period of spiritual upheaval will continue until enough human beings have achieved the same cosmic consciousness that Jesus demonstrated, creating a critical mass of spiritually awakened individuals who can collectively resist the forces of spiritual control that have governed humanity for millennia. The missing years of Jesus Christ may therefore represent not just historical curiosity, but a prophetic template for what humanity itself must undergo to achieve its full spiritual potential. The silence that has shrouded those 18 years may be breaking not because scholars have discovered new texts, but because the time has come for humanity to begin its own journey through the same cosmic education that prepared Jesus for his mission. The question that haunts the ancient texts is whether humanity has the spiritual strength to survive this education, or whether most people will be consumed by forces they are not prepared to face. The Church's protective silence may soon be revealed as either wise preparation for this moment or tragic negligence that left believers unprepared for the cosmic realities they must now confront. What is certain is that the age of concealment is ending. The missing years of Jesus Christ are about to become the revealed years, not through church authorization or academic discovery, but through direct spiritual revelation to those who are ready to receive the full truth about the cosmic war that was fought for their souls and the spiritual potential that war was meant to unlock. And now, as the shadows lengthen and the ancient secrets whisper their final revelations into the darkness of our modern age, we are left with a truth so haunting, so cosmically significant, that it will follow you into your dreams and wake you in the coldest hours of the night, with questions that pierce the very foundations of everything you thought you knew about reality itself. What if the Jesus who emerged at age 30 was not only the Lamb of God, but also the keeper of secrets humanity was never meant to know? What if those 18 missing years contained education so dangerous, so cosmically transformative, that revealing the full truth would either drive believers to despair at their own spiritual inadequacy or inspire them to attempt journeys through realms of darkness that would consume their souls? The silence that shrouds those years is not empty. It is pregnant with possibilities so terrifying that the early church fathers chose to bury them rather than risk the spiritual destruction of humanity itself. In the hidden libraries of Egypt, Jesus learned the true names of demons whose very existence could drive mortals insane. In the monasteries of Tibet, He mastered techniques of consciousness that allowed him to wage war against spiritual entities that governed entire civilizations. In the caves of Qumran, he studied prophecies of the end times that revealed the true scope of the cosmic battle being fought for every human soul. And in the wilderness, for 40 days and nights, he faced the accumulated fury of every fallen angel, every demonic principality, every cosmic force that had been corrupting humanity since the rebellion in heaven. This was not the simple temptation story taught in Sunday schools, but a battle for the spiritual destiny of every soul that would ever be born. A war so intense that the very fabric of reality trembled under the weight of its cosmic significance. When he emerged victorious, Jesus carried within his consciousness the complete blueprint of spiritual reality. Every hierarchy of angels, every network of demons, every system of cosmic control that had been established to keep human souls imprisoned in ignorance. But he also carried something else, the knowledge of how to break those systems, how to liberate human consciousness from spiritual bondage that most people don't even realize exists. The missing years of Jesus Christ were never missing. They were hidden, waiting for the time when humanity would need the full truth about the cosmic war fought for their souls and the divine potential that war was meant to unlock. That time has arrived. The question that remains is whether you have the spiritual strength to handle what you now know and the cosmic courage to walk the path that has been revealed. The carpenter from Nazareth who taught in parables was real, but so was the cosmic warrior who emerged from 18 years of supernatural education, carrying secrets that could transform human consciousness itself. Both truths are equally real, equally dangerous, and equally necessary for the spiritual survival of humanity in the days of cosmic revelation that lie ahead. What happens next depends on you. The missing years are no longer missing. The hidden is being revealed. The cosmic education that prepared Jesus for his mission is now available to humanity itself. But the same spiritual forces that opposed him will oppose you, and the same cosmic knowledge that empowered him will either transform or destroy you, depending on your spiritual preparation and divine calling. The age of concealment is over. The age of revelation has begun. And what you do with the cosmic knowledge you have received tonight will determine not only your own spiritual destiny, but the fate of human consciousness itself in the final battle between light and darkness that is now beginning to unfold across every dimension of reality. The missing years were never missing. They were waiting, and now they are revealed. Don't forget to like and share this video, and subscribe to Gospel Light Africa for more Bible stories that will change how you see the world.